All right, welcome back to Hannity. So with the Mueller report set to be released tomorrow, the Hill's John Solomon out with a brand new article. Look at it there. 10 post-Mueller questions. And what's important about this could turn the tables on the Russia collusion investigators. John, I want to ask you about that. And I also want to ask you about what Obama's White House involvement in this probe is. We saw Page and Strzok point directly to Lynch's office, and I want to know what she knew when she knew it, and I want to know what Obama knew, and Rice knew, and Clapper knew, and Brennan knew.
I think it's such an important question, and it's gotten lost for much of the last 2 years as we've debated all of the narrative that turned out not to be true. But one text message has always stood out in my mind, Sean. It's in my column again today. I mentioned it, and that is a text message from Pete Strzok to Lisa Page after they come out of one of the first foundational meetings in August after they've launched the Trump investigation. And the text says, the White House is running this. The White House is running this. I covered law enforcement for 30 years. The White House doesn't normally run counterintelligence or Justice Department investigations. That text has remained in my head for a long time. And over the last few weeks, I've been reporting. I think Victoria, in the last segment, had something really important. She said, January 2017, there was at least one White House meeting. I think next week we'll be talking about a meeting 1 year earlier where the origins of the Trump collusion case begin. A whole year earlier, and I guarantee you it will have been inside the White House.
You're saying it started in 2015?
No, 2016. See, she was talking about, yeah, she was talking January 17. January 2016, the beginning of Donald Trump's rise.
Well, we know the FBI began in in July 31st, 2016.
I'm going to say 6 months before the effort to get Trump was launched. And I think next week we'll be talking about some pretty interesting evidence. But I think it's so important for us now to step back from all this and remember this had to start somewhere, and a lot of resources had to be put into it. Who did it? What did they do? What did they know? What did they keep from the court? That's what my column is about today. There are so many questions. I interviewed all the people that are working in the IG probe, the Senate Judiciary probe around Attorney General Barr, and I tried to come up with the 10 seminal questions. And if we get them answered, I think we'll be able to ask ourselves and answer honestly.
Anything you've heard
was the
of my
FBI misused?
Monologue that you disagree with that's coming, the cascade of information, the avalanche that I'm predicting?
I don't. I think it's going to be a very difficult time for the investigators, particularly those who led the FBI, who made Christopher Steele look more trustworthy than he was.
Greg Jarrett, you know, the Russia hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton and frame Donald Trump. And here we are. We're going right back to Hillary with Lindsey Graham today. I thought of you when I read that.
Well, the Russia hoax has now been exposed for all to see, and the witch hunt has ended. It'll end formally tomorrow. No collusion, no obstruction of justice. And then, Sean, the real investigation begins for conspiracy to leak unmasked names of reporters and classified information, James Comey stealing government documents and leaking them. You've got a whole group of people who lied to judges, concealing evidence, deceiving them. That's a wide variety of crimes. And if people at the FBI and the Department of Justice were using their positions of power for political reasons to abuse the legal process, those are crimes as well.
Hang on. Did they rig the Hillary investigation?
Oh, absolutely, they rigged it.
With
the
evidence.
DOJ rigged it, and so did Comey.
Okay, and even Page and Strzok say there's a circular firing squad amongst all these deep state people in trouble, which is interesting. We have 53 more closed-door testimonies that we can get. Now, did they also try to rig the 2016 election with the phony dossier?
Yes. I mean, they were spreading this phony dossier all over Washington, Congress, the Gang of Eight, to many members of the media in order to rig the election.
These people try to basically commit a coup and unseat a duly elected president.
And when that failed, they tried a coup again, thanks to Rod Rosenstein under the 25th Amendment and considering recording the president to gather incriminating information.
Yep. All right. John, I can't wait for your report. That's a hell of a tease. John Solomon. I just want you to know. I heard every bit of that. Don't think I missed a word. All right. Thank you both.
So the people who run big journalism are always telling you we need to get a handle on fake news. Fake news. In the interest of the public, we need to get fake news off our screens. You know what that really means, and now it's clear what it really means. Enforcing an official narrative and stamping out all dissent. CNN and MSNBC, for example, spent 2 full years perpetuating the Russia hoax. The New York Times and the Washington Post did the same and won a Pulitzer Prize for it. The whole story was a complete sham, but they were not held to account. They're still considered reliable news by the big tech companies. Meanwhile, the Federalist, which is a pretty small website, got the Russia story right from day one, and yet USA Today recently blacklisted the Federalist as an unreliable source because they don't like the Federalist's politics, their views on abortion, for example. Last year, meanwhile, Wikipedia's editors banned the use of Breitbart as a source because it was deemed, quote, not reliable, meaning they hadn't helped stoke baseless fears about Vladimir Putin, apparently. Alex Marlow is the editor-in-chief of Breitbart, and we're happy to have him on our set tonight. Alex, thanks a lot for coming on.
Tucker, thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
So what does this mean in practical terms that Wikipedia users can no longer use Breitbart as a citation?
Yeah, I think in practical terms, what it means is that people who would access Wikipedia as a source are only going to get establishment media outlets to source their claims. And we know those claims, they treat full-on hoaxes as fact. They've missed the seminal stories of our time, starting with, I think, the immigration crisis, which really we started reporting on in conservative media, particularly Breitbart, 2014, 2015.
Yes.
They missed the Brexit narrative. They missed the narrative that the establishment in our media and political classes and our coastal elite losing touch with the working man and women in flyover country. They missed that. They missed, of course, the election of Donald Trump. And now...
Not a big thing. Yeah.
That's a minor thing that they totally airballed. And now we're a year and a half, maybe 2.5 years, arguably, into the Russia hoax. This is their Jonestown, the media. This is their mass suicide effort. But will it be treated like that? No, because they're a bubbled elite, and they treat themselves as if they'll always be correct.
What's so interesting is not simply that they're evading all responsibility.
Yes.
For what they did, for the lies they told and the distortions that really kind of wrecked our foreign policy, among other things.
Sure.
But that they're trying to suppress other news outlets which told the truth. How Orwellian is that?
You nailed it here. They're not suppressing us, and they're targeting you. They target us, and they'll target just about all of us right of center and who service a right of center audience, not because we're getting things wrong. They're targeting us because we're getting things right, that we got these key stories right, and we'll probably get the next key stories right. And they're doing it in a methodical way that started with Google kind of toying with the searches, which you've been very good at reporting on with Dr. Robert Epstein. Twitter with the shadow banning, which we broke at Breitbart. It was called a hoax at the time. It turned out it wasn't. Facebook had to change their algorithm because places like Breitbart were dominating. And it goes on. Wikipedia kicking us out. Our Wikipedia, it shows up every time you use Google and Facebook. They rely on Wikipedia. This is methodical, and they'll continue to expand this. Microsoft is now in the blacklisting game. They team with this group called NewsGuard, which is, of course, they sanction all the places that got the Russia hoax wrong, and they treat places like Breitbart and even the Drudge Report as fake news. It's ridiculous, and they'll continue. Next is going to be debanking. They're going to decapitalize people, not just with right-of-center worldviews. They're doing this with people who even want to have a pipeline, want to work in the energy sector, and aren't woke fascists who want the Green New Deal. It's insane.
Since free speech is dying, and what's killing it is not government, but big monopolies sanctioned by government.
Yes.
Do you know anyone in government who might be able to save free speech for the Republic? I mean, why is nobody doing anything about this?
I don't know, and that's exactly the question I was hoping you would ask, because I do hope that this is the most powerful audience in all of news, and I think that it would be great if the powerful folks who are watching it, understand that this is the battle. They are trying to win the 2020 election by shutting down and censor the outlets that might give voices to the voiceless, the people disenfranchised.
You really think you're going to get reelected president if nobody can hear your message?
Absolutely. They see this crystal clear, and that's why they're trying to shut down you and me.
Alex Marlow, come back anytime. Great to see you.
Thank you, Tucker.
Thank you very much. Ben Shapiro hosts one of America's top podcasts, The Ben Shapiro Show. He's the author of the book, The Right Side of History, and we're happy to have him on set tonight in Los Angeles. Ben, it's great to see you. Thank you.
I know how I kept a straight face while you did that.
I don't know how I did. There's so many levels here, but I do believe that this is the end of the Beto O'Rourke phenomenon.
Yeah, I think he's toast.
What are the lessons that we should draw from what we just saw?
Well, I think that you can run in the moderate lane as the Bobby Kennedy candidate so long as there's not anything newer on the block. Buttigieg came along and drank his milkshake, and he had some intersectional credibility. The problem for Beto is that he happened to be straight and also white, just like Bobby Kennedy was. Buttigieg is gay, so therefore he takes precedence. Also, he speaks more languages, like Norwegian, which is a language that is very much in vogue with the media these days. And he doesn't just play guitar, he also plays piano, and he does it with Ben Folds 5 and the whole deal. So Buttigieg has basically stolen all of his momentum. And I think you're right. I mean, I think Beto is toast here.
Speaking Norwegian and playing the piano, and I'm being sincere, are actually impressive
cool.
things to do, for sure, and I'm impressed by them. But they're not really policy prescriptions. They're not ideas that are going to improve America. Neither is who you sleep with relevant to running the country, as far as I can tell, or any of these criteria meaningful. So, like, where's the part where we get to debate their ideas for the country?
Well, the problem is, obviously, that there's only one thought leader in the Democratic Party right now, and that's Bernie Sanders. And what you're seeing is a bunch of candidates who are attempting to steer into the Bernie Sanders lane. And there's no room in that lane. Bernie Sanders has occupied that entire lane. And you talk about ideas candidates. The one candidate who keeps shouting ideas from the rooftops is, of course, our Native American candidate, Elizabeth Warren, who keeps spouting ideas every 5 minutes. Here's a new policy prescription. Why isn't anyone paying attention to me? And the answer is because you are in Bernie Sanders' lane. He is the thought leader in this lane. Well, in the moderate lane, there are no thought leaders. There are just a bunch of people with platitudes. Biden is presumably the thought leader, but Joe Biden doesn't have enough thoughts to be a thought leader. And so who exactly is going to come along and occupy that lane while still being able to win over the woke intersectional base of the Democratic Party? Whoever does that has a possibility at the nomination. Right now, Buttigieg can do that only insofar as he can speak the platitudes that sound moderate. But when he's actually pegged down, as you've noted, he's just as far left as Bernie Sanders is.
There's a guy telling us what a great Christian he is who's for abortion up until birth and for sex selection. Spare me your Christian talk, please. It's absurd. I'm just struck, though, by Bernie could be the one guy. I mean, I want to have a conversation about ideas because I think it's important. And clearly we need to make some changes to the way the country's going. But Bernie doesn't really seem to be an ideas candidate when you listen to him. He almost never says anything, unlike Elizabeth Warren, he never says anything interesting. Why is that?
Well, I mean, I think that his ideas are so radical, but they are consistent. And so everybody has followed him out to the fringe. So he can shout Medicare for all, and what you'll see is every Democrat then pay homage to Medicare for all. Footnote, we don't really want Medicare for all. We want sort of a gradualistic plan that may achieve Medicare for all sometime in the future.
Right.
But everybody is trying to imitate Bernie. Bernie is the guy who is really running this race. Bernie's almost in a position right now that Trump was in 2016, where everybody in the Democratic Party who's running is afraid to tick him off because they hope that eventually he'll collapse and they'll get his support. But he's riding at 25 to 30% in virtually all of the polls. That support is extraordinarily durable. I don't think that it's going anywhere. And so he can just steer that lane. He could win Iowa. He could win New Hampshire. He could do well in California and New York. There's a reason that Democrats are running scared of Bernie. And what is puzzling to me is that they are so interested in what the journalists on Twitter say, this kind of echo chamber in the media say, that they won't just go to where the mainstream of their own party is, which is the moderate area, right? Joe Biden is a terrible candidate. He's actually leading in most of these polls because he is perceived as a moderate.
It's totally true.
But that was true of Beto and Buttigieg, by the way. The reason both of them were doing well for a moment there was because they are both perceived as moderate with all of the platitudes. And then when you get down to policy, it turns out that they want to be more like Bernie than like Biden. Nobody in the Democratic Party actually has the stones to run as a moderate inside the Democratic Party, even though it's probably the best possible way for them to win the nomination.
And I think you're absolutely right. And your diagnosis is that they are captive of social media, and that's why?
I think they're captive of social media. I think that they're captive of the intersectional woke base. I think they're afraid that they are going to be held hostage to the dictates of the New York Times editorial board and people suggesting that they're not woke enough if they don't pay homage to the latest flavor, slavery reparations, or whatever it is today.
I think the person who gives the finger to that mob gets the support of millions.
I think that's right, and then has a good shot in the general.
Right.
But I don't think any of them have the actual...
You'd probably get my support. I mean, if someone were to stand up and say, you know what, I'm not taking orders from you. How's that sound? I you don't even care what the person is for. I'd probably vote for him because I'm so desperate for that.
I mean, that is why if a Democrat actually were able to do that, they would win sweeping support. But they can't do that. But we've been saying this for years. All you have to do is not be crazy, and they can't stop themselves. They just can't.
So good. Ben Shapiro, great to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you, too.